Good evening, everyone. So tonight, as we usually do every second Monday of each month, we have our meeting in English, and as it's been happening for quite a while now, maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years or more, and we are studying the Gospel according to Spiritism. Every month we have a lecture on one of the topics of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And usually before that we have a reading of a message from a specific book. The book we're reading before our meetings is Our Daily Bread. Tonight we're going to have our dear friend Juliana to read for us and make a small comment. One day I'm hoping and praying that Cristiane will be here saying something to us. She's laughing. I don't know why. Yeah, you wish. Yeah, that's a good wish to have, right? So, but before we do that, we usually do our initial prayer so that we can focus even more on the good things of life, thinking about the good spirits that are with us, thinking about our dear Master and friend, Jesus, and above it all, think about God, our Father, Mother, Creator, the one that gave us life and gives us this opportunity of being here. So we pray by saying, Dear Master Jesus, once again, like always, under your blessings, together with your heart, we would like to thank you for all the peaceful moments that we've been having in our lives, and also for those moments of turbulence, because through it all, we know that you are always around us, embracing us, giving us the strength, and showing us the best ways that we can use your teachings to improve our own lives. So thank you for allowing us to know your teachings, to show us this way, the way of the truth, the way to the light. And may your light fall upon us all, fall in our minds, but shine bright within our hearts, so that we can see the best ways, the best pathways for us to walk, following your lead, and also by leaving behind a trace of light for those who are walking together with us. So may your blessings be with us, not only tonight, but always. So be it. So with this prayer, we'd like to invite Juliana. She's going to read and make a brief comment to us on a chapter of Our Daily Bread.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight's reading is chapter 108 from the book Our Daily Bread. It's called Prayer. Persevere in prayer, being watchful and with it thanksgiving, Paul said in Colossians 4:2. Many believers would like to use prayer as if they were a broom or hammer. They expect immediate results, unaware of any preparatory effort. Others persevere in prayer but remain frightened and anxious. They wear themselves out and consume valuable energy on unjustifiable afflictions. They see only evil and the darkness. They never take time to examine the tender young sprout of the divine seed, or the close or remote potential for the good. They imprison themselves on the evil side and sometimes waste an entire lifetime without any intention of going over to the good side. What probability of success could possibly be in store for the needy who cry out of their appeals with obvious symptoms of imbalance? From the very start, a sensible grantor will hold off on an answer, prudently waiting for the potential grantee to regain his or her composure. In this sense, Paul's words are clear. It is imperative to persist in prayer, to be watchful and with the thanksgiving. It is crucial to realize that praise does not only entail utterly beautiful words, it also means being happy while in full combat for the victory of the good, expressing gratitude to the Lord for the reasons for the suffering and sacrifice, and seeking the advantage that adversity and effort have brought to the spirit. Let us ask Jesus for the gift of peace and happiness, but let us not forget to glorify his sublime designs each time his merciful, just will clashes with our inferior objectives. Let us be convinced that ill-timed prayer, comprised of desperate thoughts and improper demands, is destined for the soil of renewal, and it happens to an unproductive flower blown away by the wind. I really love this passage because it's one of those times when it really centers yourself, and really makes you reflect about what is it that you're asking for when you pray, when you ask God for something. When a lot of times when we pray, especially when we're going through very hard times, we ask God for some type of blessing, because either we're going through some pain or we're going through some, we're trying to better ourselves. But a lot of times prayer can be during a time of despair, and we ask God for the things, but have you ever thought about, like, have you ever asked yourself, how did you feel any better after that prayer? Did you feel any more positive? Do you feel any more hope? And sometimes especially when we're going through a very hard time and we ask God for something, and yet at the end of that prayer we still feel fearful of the future, and we kind of forget about, God is looking down at you and asking, why are you so fearful? I'm here. Just ask God for something, but don't fear the future. And I think that's and it goes to show, like, what is our lack of faith or hope for the future. So, and it's and what Paul here is saying is that we don't pray but yet continue to be desperate, because what is good in that prayer, that's not something valuable. So let us pray, but let's be hopeful and positive for the future. And in this passage, I really love the ending. He ends like this, saying, let us be convinced that ill-timed prayer, comprised of desperate thoughts and improper demands, is destined for the soil of renewal, as it happens to an unproductive flower blown away by the wind. So every time you do a prayer, but yet you still feel fearful, you still feel like there's that, lack of hope or faith, that is that flower that won't provide good seeds. So for every good prayer, that's the good seeds that we can get out of ourselves. And for every bad ill prayer, ill thoughts, those are just going to be back in the soils, because that's not the seed that God is here asking us for. So let us think about that thought, and every time when we pray and we think, let us have hope. Even when it's hard to hold on to hope, let us be positive and pray with all your heart, and that the good will come once you're done. So thank you so much for your time. Now I'm going to pass it on to Mackenzie. Thank you so much.
I am back. Thank you, Julie, for the message. Beautiful message, and a lot to reflect upon. Prayer, right? Want to wait on our daily bread. So, as we've been doing for the past few months, we've been studying chapter number 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And as we've been saying as well for the past few months, this is the longest chapter of the book. It's we're probably gonna have still like 2 or 3 more English meetings on this same chapter, which is blessed are the afflicted. And as a coincidence, or as it goes, we are also studying the same chapter on the Portuguese side. But of course, it will go much faster because we have more meetings in Portuguese. So, and I like to say it every time, and because I think it is something that's really important for us, and is to ask why. And of course, we don't have him to ask here. We don't have Kardec here to ask him why he did it. But knowing that when a person has his mindset on doing something that's good or that's worth doing, and doing the best that he can to do it, to do that job the best that he can, and as he did, we have to think that being a teacher, being a person of the sciences, he chose to make with this chapter a statement, to really say something about human suffering and why we suffer. Why do we go through what we need to go through? Why do we go through this life? Why do we have all these issues? And he takes a lot of messages from different spirits in different countries, and mostly in Paris or in France, but in different places that they received, and then he puts together this collection of messages talking about stuff that he worried about, or stuff that some people worried about, and then maybe went to him to talk to him about. Because we have to remember that when he wrote this book, or he put this book together, and he wrote a piece of it, a big piece of it as well. But when he was organizing this, it has been already almost 5 to 6 years from the beginning of what we call Spiritism, from where the first date when the first book was published in 1857. This book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, was published in 1864. So it's been almost 7 years after. But of course, that within this 7-year period, he was gathering these messages. He was publishing some of them in the Spiritist magazine, and by this time he had already had the time to gather these messages and say, okay, so how can I put these together to create something to help other people? And I can imagine that if today we talk about depression, which is to some people the disease of the century, at the time the word depression was not existent as it is today, right? When we talk about stuff of the past, and we say, for example, when it's Christmas time, right? So we say, "Tis Christmas," T-I-S, Christmas, "Tis Christmas." And nobody says this anymore. I mean, you talk to people when they're going to say, "Oh, it is Christmas. Christmas is out there," or "Christmas is this." Nobody says "tis Christmas" anymore. But TIS means it's Christmas. But it was people that used to talk like this in the past, and they don't talk like this anymore. And of course, if you come today and you start talking about, oh, I'm going to send this message to somebody. So I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to send this message to Cristiani, or I'm going to send this message to Adriana, right? So people that live today will start thinking of what? Probably a text message, or probably an SMS, or probably an email, or probably, but can you imagine during Kardec time, say, oh, Kardec, I'm going to send a message to this person. How would he send this message? He would never think of email. He would never think of text message, right? Because it's a different word. It's a message. It's still a message, but it cannot use, you cannot use the same idea or the same means of transportation, let's say, to deliver that message. So that doesn't mean that the message doesn't exist. It only means that the word or the means of reaching there, it gets to the other person in a different way. So depression is not something that happens only today. Depression is the message, or the disease behind the word depression is something that existed probably forever, but was never diagnosed as such, or we didn't understand that much. We didn't know how to say, or what to say, or how that felt back then. So in the past, we could probably say, or we could probably think about that this message that we're going to study tonight, which is this piece here in the Gospel according to Spiritism, is called Melancholy. That's probably the closest word to describe somewhat what we describe today as depression, which is not the same way. If we talk about melancholy today, it's not the same thing. Oh, I'm melancholic. Oh, I'm depressed. Those two things are not necessarily the same thing. They can be, but they are not necessarily the same thing. So why am I doing all this introduction here? Is to first make sure that when we are talking about something, we know what we are talking about. That's what I'm trying to make the point. Because sometimes, and if I come to a place and I order, for example, a Subway. Oh, I want a Subway. What am I saying? Right? A person that never heard the word Subway referring to a sandwich, they might get confused, because why do you want a train? You're not even close to the metro station. You're not even. Why do you want it? Right? Or, oh, I want a sub. A lot of people know what it is, but oh, I want a Hoger. What is a Hoger? It's another way of saying sub. It's another way of saying the same thing. So we might not know what we are talking about depending on the word. And sometimes we use a word that means something to someone and means something completely different to another person. So when we talk about depression, we can be talking about two different things. That's how I know. That's how I perceive, at least. Because I hear sometimes people saying that I am depressed. Oh, I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. And the person is probably telling the truth. He or she is not lying. But it might not be the disease depression that can be diagnosed, that can be a doctor can really see that you have a lack of something physical in your body that leads your body to feel in a different way, and then you feel like you have no power. You feel like you have nothing that you can hang on to, that you can hold on to, and it may lead you into a really, really dark path, let's say. But then there is the person that can say, oh, I'm so depressed because it's raining outside. It's not the same thing. It's because, oh no, I prefer the sun, so now I feel depressed. The person doesn't want to say that she is or he is sick. The person just want probably to say that, oh, how bad it is that it's not bright outside. So I feel like a little sad because there's no light outside. So these are two completely different things. And the computer also knows and just said something right there. So this I wanted to make very clear, because we need to try to understand. And sometimes, as I don't know if you've been through this or not, but sometimes any of these diseases or these problems that we have that are not considered to be physical, that are not like, oh, I lost my finger, or I have a heart problem, or I have some of these mental problems, or these problems that are not immediately related to something physical, we get a kind of a prejudice against them, as if the person can solve it right away. It's just a matter of will. I'm gonna do it, and then that's it. But some of these problems, some of these difficulties, these mental difficulties, or these kinds of problems that go within the soul, they also have their part in the physical body. So we have to always remember that, and we have to try to empathize with people that have these problems, because sometimes a person says, "Oh, I'm going through this depression," or my young mothers, or mothers that have like postpartum depression, right? And then they feel so depressed they can't hold their babies, they cannot do so. And then we tend to judge, or we see a lot of people judging them. Oh, how come a mother cannot hold the baby, and so on. But it is something that goes into their bodies, and we need to try to understand it, because we really don't know what the other person is going through. So it is something that we need to start to understand, that depending on how people treat these guys or women that are suffering from a mental problem, if we don't embrace the problem, if we don't look at them in a way of accepting them with their problems, and maybe not being able to help, but at least to be able to say that I understand, or I'm with you, I am here, I'm not. This can lead to terrible consequences sometimes. So we see, for example, right, my older daughter, she takes care of some babies for her friend once a week or twice a week, and her friend is married. She has two kids, and she has 3 dogs. So one of the dogs is a German Shepherd that was trained to be an aid to her husband. Her husband went to the war, and he has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes he wakes up crying, he wakes up screaming, because of the trauma that he lived during the war. And we don't know what that is. We really don't know what that is. Every time I read about it, or I think about it, I want to know what it is, but I'm afraid of knowing what it is, because we don't know how to relate to that. It is so hard to imagine that a person is there and see people being killed by your side, or being afraid of being killed at all times. You don't know what's going to happen. You live like a minute at a time, because you really don't know what's going to happen. So this dog is trained to help him. So if he starts like to cry or to do something in his sleep, the dog will go to him and will wake him up, so that he can feel safe. And this type of thing that happens today, that people start to care and know that a dog can help, know that this is a real problem, know that this is something that is not a creation of your mind or of your imagination. It's something that goes really deep within. But can you imagine, we don't need, I think, to go too far down, but maybe, I don't know, 30 years ago, when people didn't care about, and people and soldiers were coming back from wars, and they were describing this, and everybody was making fun of them. Even today, there's a lot of people committing suicide because they cannot withstand that stress, and they don't see any exit out of it. So by accepting these, and by really trying to understand and trying to be there for these people if they are close to us. Like I said, we cannot do everything, but we can be accepting of what it is, and be empathetic to the problem, and not be laughing behind or talking, saying stuff. Oh, you're so weak, or you're so this, or so that. Then we if they are feeling bad, they will feel even worse. And then what do we know what these people can do with their own lives? And like I said, I mean, although it's better than it was in the past, but the number of suicides amongst people that came back from war is way bigger than from the regular population, because they see no exit out of it. They see no stopping of that problem, and some of it is because there's no real support behind them. And so all this introduction is to say that we have to always, when we are studying Spiritism, or when we are studying the teachings of Jesus, we always have to remember, always, that despite we have this ability or this idea that we live, that we don't die, that we keep living when we die, we have to remember that we are here not to die. We are here to live. And if we are here to live, if we are here to fulfill my life, I always need to remember both sides of the life. I need to remember the side of the spiritual side, but I also need to remember the material side. Because sometimes when I'm talking here, when we're talking about Spiritism, and we read a message like this one here, which talks about this melancholy message, which is item number 25 of chapter 5, like I said in the beginning. The Spirit here is talking about the spiritual side of things. And then if we don't stop to think about the way he says things here, and we tend to take this part as being the whole, as being the only thing, we're going to miss something. We're going to miss the material side of help. We're going to miss the material side of a medicine that can work, that needs to work, like something that some people in some cases will need to take. So if I am a schizophrenic, for example, if I have PTSD, or if I have these fits of depression, and it's a real disease, Spiritism can help with passes. Spiritism can help with prayers. Spiritism can help with counseling. But medicine needs to be in the picture. It doesn't solve everything, because we still don't have that power. If we were to talk about Jesus and what he was able to see and what he was able to do with our bodies, with his body, with the way he can cure, with the way he can do stuff, we would probably be able to help much more than we can help now. But we don't have that power yet. And if we don't have that power yet, but God gave the gift of people to study medicine, to study pharmacology, to study. Why do we have so many medicines? Why do we have the possibility of taking something to help me function better? So I wanted to make this whole argument here, because we always need to remember that we live in a material world. We are spirits living in a material world. We are embraced by matter. And we need to use matter. We need to use our bodies. We need to use whatever we have to function properly, to do what we need to do properly. So when the Spirit here talks about melancholy, he will talk about the spiritual side of it, which is really, really important. Because there's a saying in Portuguese that says, something um, to the sorts of I'm going to tell a story that can show exactly what I want to mean. But if you kill um, a snake when it's very young, it will never be a full-grown snake. Why do I read? Why is it is important to know about melancholy? It's not to use on other people that have melancholy. It's not to use on other people that have depression. It is to understand the message and say, hey, look, here are the first signs of melancholy. If you start having some of these things that he says here, pay attention. Kill that snake before it becomes too big. Try to avoid it, because when it's grown, it's going to be much worse. It's going to be really hard to get it. So there's this guy that once was going to the big town, and he lived in a very far away countryside town. And he only knew at the time, he only knew horses and donkeys. That's how they used to move in his town. So they said, okay, so you're gonna go to this big town. He was a young man still. So you're gonna go to this town, and there you're gonna get the train. So he goes to the town, and then when he sees that monstrous thing coming, he says, what? How am I gonna get this? This is too big. So he gets his whatever it is, the lasso. Yeah, I don't know. The lasso. Yeah, that's how it's said as well. And then he tries to get just like he would get the horse, right? And then he lassos the train, and of course, he breaks himself completely. He's in a hospital, and oh my goodness, and spends like a few days, and said, his friend comes and, where are you? Oh, I'm in the hospital, and blah, blah, blah. So he goes visit him. It says, oh, that's what happens. Oh, that's not how you do it. And you wait for it to stop, and then it will open the door, and you go inside, and it will take you to a... But it was done already, right? So but apparently, is one of those people that, are stubborn, and that thing is really dangerous. I cannot allow that thing to happen again. So he's walking down, going back to his house, and then he stops by a storefront, and then he sees these things inside, and he goes inside like insanely crazy, grabs something in his hand and see a train, a small train right there, and then he smashes the train, breaks the full train, and crashes the whole toy. Everybody goes stop him and say, why are you doing this? So we have to kill this thing before it gets too big, because it's too dangerous. We need to destroy this train before it's too big. If we are feeling like sad, and we don't know why we're feeling sad, we have to think about, why am I so sad? What is making me be like this? And don't allow that to grow too much. Otherwise, we can probably lose control over it. And then, after some time, how am I going to do it? If I didn't control it, or if I couldn't do anything when that thing was still a small train. So, he starts, is it a he or a she? François, so it's a he. He starts by saying, do you know why sometimes a vague sadness fills your heart, leading you to consider that life is bitter? Do you know why? He asks. And it is a very interesting question, because I'd say that a lot of us have gone through this in our lives. Sometimes we wake up and then we feel sad. We don't know why we feel sad. And here, once again, we can put things into two different perspectives at least. One is the spiritual one, which is the one that he brings here. The other one might be a material one. The material one, so that I can go back to this one, might be that we have an imbalance in something physical in my body, that I'm lacking a kind of enzyme or something that my body is not producing. So if my body is not producing that, I may feel sad, or I may feel that I need something. So we don't know if that's the case or not. But we have, these days, we have enough information to be aware of that. Not we're going to go looking for a doctor at the first time that we feel sad, but it's something that we need to be aware of. But what he says here, it is very interesting, because by being a spirit, by not being the body that I have, by being an immortal being, I know that the part of me that's this immortal being does not belong here, does not belong to the material world, belongs to the spiritual world, belongs to where I am or where I was created. And what he says here, this is his answer. Why do we have that feeling of being a little sad sometimes? And he says, this is because your spirit, this is because you, this is because us, this is because me, a spirit, not a body, a spirit, aspiring to happiness and liberty. Everybody looks for happiness, and everybody wants to be free. On finding itself tied to the physical body, so I want happiness and I want freedom. But I know that I'm going to get sick, that my body's going to get sick. And I know that I don't have all the freedom that I wish I could have. On finding itself tied to the physical body, which acts like a prison, becomes exhausted, tired, through vain efforts to seek release. I want something to relieve me from this weight that the body, that the material world puts on me. But I cannot get out of this every time I want. So I have this feeling of sadness because I cannot reach right now for what I want. Which makes me think about how many times I have asked for something, and that something that I asked came to me easy. And then how many times after getting it easy, in the next minute it just didn't matter anymore to me, because I got it too easy, because it was too I ask and I get, I ask and I get. So everything becomes unimportant. But the things that I work for, the things that I really fight for, the things that I really struggle to get, usually when I get, it's worth a lot to me. And I will take care of that. So I keep thinking about, it might be hard, it is hard in our lives to have these problems. But once we conquer these problems, they are worth a lot to me. Say I want to study something, and then we have our parents, or we have our fathers, our father, our mother, give to us that study. Then it's not coming from my pocket. I have it for free. So sometimes I don't even pay attention precisely to everything that's happening. But once I get out and I have to work, and I don't have the time that I had before, even if somebody else is paying, that now is worth much more than it was before. Because now I understand that before everybody did a lot of things for me and I didn't even know it. Now that I have to do it myself, we start to understand how important that thing is to me. Once I, with Spiritism and with the teachings of Jesus, by showing us that we are really not just a physical body, we have to put things into perspective, to see things in a different way. Otherwise, this will happen all the time. Every time we have a problem, every time we have this a sadness, it can become, and it will probably become, the worst thing that could happen, because we are not seeing it through the lens or through the light of a different way of importance that these things come to me. When I recognize that trying to get rid of the physicality, the body, of trying to get rid of these things is useless, there's no point in getting rid of it. We have to try to understand that there's the need to accept. We need to accept some things that happen in life. And by saying we need to accept is not saying that we don't need to fight to overcome, that we don't need to fight to make it better, to make it work in a better way. What I'm saying is we need to understand that there are limits to some things. So say, I always like to think about this. We have in track and field on the Olympics, we have the 100 meters dash, which is just a straight line, and those competitors, on the sound of a gun or a big sound, they start running, and 100 meters later they stop, or they don't stop. I mean, they measure the time that they ran 100 meters. I don't know, say 30, 40, 50 years ago, the time that it took for a fastest man to come from the zero, from being stopped to get to 100, was above 10 seconds. Say 10 seconds and 30, 10.3 seconds or 10.5 seconds. Now it's 9.6. So it's almost a second less. I don't know the time, but there's also a 100-meter dash in the pool. So the person jumps and swims back and forth to come back. I always tend to think like this when we talk about limits, when we talk, there are some things that we cannot change. I cannot see a man swimming faster than a man running, because the water weighs much more than what air weighs. The strength that you have to put yourself to, your body to, in the water, to go that 100 meters is much more than what you have to do just by running. So there is a limit to what we can get. Say we can run in 8 seconds. If a person the next day runs in 7 seconds and 59 or 7.99, there will be no time when a man in a body will run that 100 meters dash in 1 second. So there is a limit. We will run up to a certain point, and we can keep trying. And that's what I'm saying. We need to keep trying to make it better. But we know that physically it is impossible to do some certain levels of stuff. It's the same thing. If I am feeling worried, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling weird, melancholic. We need to learn how to fight it. We need to learn how to keep trying to improve, keep trying to do something to make it feel different, to see things through a different perspective, to try to change that. But we need to know that we cannot change everything. There's a limit to what we can change. There's a limit to what we can do. And if we don't accept that we have that limit, it becomes so much harder to live, so much harder to really understand that if it's there, it's not for me to suffer. If it's there, it's for me to learn. If it's there, it's for me to get that point, to get what's being dealt, the hand that life is dealing me with, and learn what I can do with those cards in my hand. So if I'm having if I feel like the world is too heavy on me, I need to look out for something to relieve this. Spiritism, when we talk about spirituality, shows us that if we have a mindset to something, and Jesus is a master in saying these things. He says, with me, your burden is less heavy. What does he want to say? With me, your burden is less heavy. I remember when I was very young, and I was listening to this talk by Annette Guimarães, which, by the way, will be here in a few weeks, in May, in 2 months more or less. And that story that she told, that never got out of my mind. She said at the time that she was talking about this topic, about Jesus saying that with him, our problems will be lessened. It will feel less heavy or lighter. And came a friend of hers and asked her and told her the following, or somewhat something to the sorts of, I don't believe that. That cannot be true. How can a teaching, or how can something like that really make something else become less heavy? The weight is the same, so how come it becomes less heavy? And she said that she was intrigued by his question, and so she started looking for an answer to that, if that could really be true or not. And he said something, if you bring me any kind of study that shows that that's true, then I'll start, conceding that some of these teachings really make sense, because it really doesn't make sense that just by believing in something, this will become less heavy. And then she said that she started like crazy to look for a study or to look for something that could show that that's true. And time was passing, and the date that he set for her to bring something was getting close and close and close, up to the day when it was like 1 or 2 days away, and then she found a study that showed exactly that. That once we start to live life with a new perspective, seeing things in a way of, instead of seeing things in a negative perspective, but seeing a more positive side to things, the study showed that those people that see things with this goodness within his or her heart, within with that perspective of, everything is here for a reason. These people against the people that, tend to complain about everything, tend to see bad things on everything that they do, they considered weights that they were lifting lighter than the people who were negative on their lives. And the study showed that they didn't believe, people that were happier, people that were living by these teachings of believing in something more hopeful, when they got, say, a book, they said it was, I don't know, let's just put numbers here. They say this book was half a pound, while the other people would say the book weighs a pound. And that was the only difference, is because in the study they said that the book was the same, and the book weighs the same, but the perception of the person who is looking to the future, putting something in the future perspective, waiting for something or hoping for something to happen good, makes you feel more powerful, makes you feel more in control, with liking or seeing and knowing that you have no control, which is something that I find very interesting. When you know that you don't have control over everything, it feels like you're more in control of your life than when you want to have control over everything. You want to control everything, and then you will see things that are out of your control, and then you feel more unhappy. But when we know that there's a lot of things that I don't control, said, there's nothing that I can do. So you do whatever you need to do. Not only with melancholy this works. This works with everything and anything in our lives. Once we start to notice that we are going into these anxiety states, or we are going and thinking about, oh, what's it going to happen, or why this is happening, why is this is happening. Prayer, like Juliana said in the beginning, it's one of the things. But what did she say? We have to be hopeful, right? We have to put this thing to. So prayer is one thing, but I need to act. Otherwise, prayer and not doing anything, it's just such a small piece in the puzzle of everything, that it doesn't solve the whole problem. It is important for me to get strength, to get that light. But if I get the light and I don't shine the light, what's the point? Oh, I have a flashlight in my hand. Adriana gave me a flashlight. Oh, push the button. Oh, no, I'm too tired. So what's the point of having a flashlight? So it's the same idea. The prayer is of this flashlight. But I pray, give me the flashlight with the prayer so I can use it. And then, no, I'm waiting here. Just like the guy that said, oh no, God can solve everything that all my problems. And said, yeah. So then he says, he's at the street, and apparently he lives near a circus, and there comes this elephant running down the road. And then he says, looks at the elephant, and the person says, oh, God will help me. Say, yeah. See that elephant? Yeah, and you see the guy screaming on top of it, hey, get out of the way, everybody, the elephant, they cannot control it, and everybody is in. And the guy said, oh, no, God will help me. The elephant will not come near me because I'm here, and God is seeing me, and God's everywhere, so he's in the elephant. So, of course, the elephant goes through him, and he's all broken, just like the guy in the train, and said, oh, God. And God comes and talks to him. And he looks at the guy and says, why did you move? Didn't you move? He said, no, you said you were everywhere, so you were in the elephant, so I would not be killed. He said, yeah, but I was in the guy too, and the guy was screaming to you, get out of the way. So which one did you choose? You chose to believe in what you want. You didn't want to hear the signs. And that's basically what it is. I mean, we cannot solve every problem. We cannot do it alone, do everything alone. We cannot. We can do our best. We can try to focus. We can try to see the signs. And when we see the signs, we Look for someone. You know, go to the church that you go to and talk to your pastor, talk to your priest, talk to a friend in the Spiritist Center, talk to a friend that is not even Spiritist, is not religious person, but a person that has common sense, that will give something to you, to me, to you, to us, to work on and think about it, about that problem in a different way, and try to do something. But most of the times, when we are tired, and that's where we don't want to reach, is to get too tired so that I cannot do anything else. Don't let the train get too big. Don't let the train grow. Kill the train while it's still small. Let's think about our lives as this gift that, if we are living under stress, under certain circumstances, what can I learn from that situation? What can I learn from that problem? And how can I work it out? How can I talk to some people? What lesson can I take from a book, a good book, to apply to that situation, that I can use that small thing in my life? Do I need to stop and meditate? Do I need to stop and pray? Do I need to go out and help some people? Do I need to, can I go out and see some people that are really suffering of a really bad thing, and then say, okay, I suffer too, they suffer. So we are at the same world, and we go through problems. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't relieve the complete pressure, but it shows us that if somebody can do, I can do too. Maybe not as good as them, but maybe I can do better than them. Maybe I can do this better than what the other person is doing. So I can apply some of the teachings that I'm studying, to my life in certain ways, and the other person can apply to another one. So we need to I think one of the words that I'm repeating is perspective. We really need to put things into perspective. We really need to. To finalize, I just want to tell a brief story that happened, not to me, but to a friend of mine. I was talking to this guy the other day. He's not a friend of a long time, but I met him a few months ago on the internet in a group that I participate. And I asked him to send me a small description of how he started to read comic books when he was a kid. So he sends me a brief description of how he did it and why he did it. And he said that he lived such a hard life, that it was an escape from him when he discovered comic books, that he could get the comic books and read, and then he would live in that fantasy. So it was easier for him to live. And up to this day, he's still in love with comic books, just like I am. And but I never had that perspective, because I didn't grow up in a situation like he did, although he didn't describe, but he said it was a really bad one. So to me, comic books has a completely different way, right? It weighs differently in my life, but we both like it a lot. And but out of that conversation, which was just like 2 minutes, I mean, he said it, he wrote it, and he sent it to me. And then he started to talk about his life now. And then he started to say that, the office that we open, we're going to need to return the office. We cannot pay the rent anymore. The business is not going well, so I don't know what's going to happen. And he started talking about how hard it was for him and so on. And I started trying to tell him, we know it is hard sometimes, and start to talk a little bit about these things, and thinking to myself, you don't know people. We don't know who we're talking to. We don't know the problems, the difficulties that the other person is going through. And at that moment, if I had a problem, just by listening to him describing his problem, my problems all went away, because I don't have any problem at that specific moment. Because we are relating to a person, we are seeing a person that has a problem, a real problem, a serious problem. And at that specific moment, my boss came. I was talking to him before the time to start working. Then my boss arrived. That was about 8, and the guy is in Brazil, so he was 2 hours ahead of me, so it was early. And he says, he talks to me, and I had finished talking to this friend already, but I was in that space where you cannot really see much, because you're so involved with your thoughts, and and my boss passed by, stopped and said hello, and we usually talk like for, I don't know, 10-15 minutes before going to work. And I just couldn't say anything to him, because I was in that mind, thinking about this friend, thinking about that person, thinking about my life. And I said, then when I finished, when he passed by, and then I was there, and then I said, oh, I have to go talk to him, because I was kind of not rude, but I didn't say anything. So I went down and sat down with my boss and started talking to him. And he says at one point, to cut it short, my boss says at one point, and we think sometimes that we have problems. That's what my boss said. This friend has a daughter and a wife, and they were both working at this office. They tried to make it work. It didn't work. He told me, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might want to get something and go sell in the traffic light, so I can have money to do something for my daughter. That's what he said. And I told my boss, and my boss says, yeah, we don't know. We don't know the problems of other people. We don't know. So that's one of the suggestions. It's not the only one, maybe not the best one, but it's a good suggestion, I'd say. It's hear other people's problems. Empathize with other people. So when we go through something that's not good, we can put it into perspective. We need help, but it's not the end of the world. We need help, and we can get help. We need help, and we have friends. We need help, and we have a church to go, a spirit center to go. We have people around me. So just let's put things into perspective. The text says many different things here, but the text is chapter 5, item 25, the Gospel according to Spiritism, talk about melancholy, the spirit. François de Genève, this text was written in Bordeaux, in France, and I hope we can all have friends, and we can all know where to look for help when we need help. And with this, I'd like to just make a brief intermission here before we go to the passes, to talk a little bit about the 13th United States Spiritist Symposium. 13 years already, happening every year in a different state in the Union. It happened in New York already. It happened in Boston already. It happened in Florida already. Happened in Chicago, in Atlanta, in a lot of different places. And this year is happened in Connecticut a few years ago. And this year is happening in New Jersey. It's going to be May 4th in 2009 in the town of Union in New Jersey. And it's a Saturday. It's a Saturday from 9 to 6. It also has activities for kids from 6 to 16 years old. And the title, or the main topic of the symposium, is The Awakening of the Self. And there will be 6 main talks. The essential being on exploration of our true nature, making sense of reincarnation. Do we live our fate or create our destiny? Building happiness and peace a thought at a time. Self-awareness and inner transformation. And love, the driving force of the universe. So these will be talks from people from all around the country. People will come from Florida. People will come from here. Flavio Zanetti will be there to talk. Julio Carvalho from New Jersey. Then Daniel Assisi will be there with 2 talks, 2 spiritist conversations, talking about why should we change and how can spiritism help us. This will be talks with, or conversations with few group of people. And Jussara Korngold will be there, Naul Fonseca will be there. So a lot of people that we know that have been here to this Spiritist Center as well. And so it's a full day of work, and our dear friend Sergio is here. He came from New York to bring these to us, to show this to us. And he with his, other friends, they prepared a small video. It's about 2 to 3 minutes to talk just a little bit about the event. And I'm gonna show it right there so that we can see what they are preparing for us. And right after that, we'll go to the passes, and then we will go to the end of our meeting. Do you want to say something, Sergio? No? Okay.
Very short. Very short. So people can watch online.
Dear friends, we would like to invite you to a truly amazing event, the 13th Annual U.S. Spiritist Symposium. Every year, we gather in a different part of the country to exchange information, knowledge, friendship, and love. The symposium is a unique personal growth event that combines the insights of scientific research on spirituality with a huge array of spiritual topics. This year's theme is the awakening of the self. We'll be meeting at Kane University in Union, New Jersey. Please don't miss the opportunity to take your life to a new level of self-awareness and purpose. There's also a food program for children and teenagers, so feel free to bring them along. For a more detailed program, please visit www.spiritistsymposium.org. Join us on May 4th, 2009, and prepare for a whole day of fun and learning. See you there!
So, quick and an invitation with the voice of our dear friend Isabella. She's been here with us to sing, and a wonderful person, a wonderful friend. And so that's it. The Awakening of the Self, May 4th, 2019. Everybody is invited. Sergio is here. He can, if anybody wants to compromise already and do the registration, he can register us online now, but he will probably be waiting for us there. So hopefully at least one of us can go there to see. The ones that I've been, I always enjoyed it. So hopefully I'll be able to come. I don't know, but thank you for bringing it to us, Sergio, and being here with us. It's wonderful to have you here. So with this, let's do the passes, and right after that we have our prayer, final prayer, so we can all go home safe and sound.